Greetings everyone. Today we're going to explore slope-intercept form. You'll need your notebook and the foldable provided to you in class. Let's go over how to fold the foldable. For our foldable, you'll want to have it on your desk this way. Grab the bottom and you want to fold the bottom up until you see the title. You want a clear title of slope-intercept form. You then want to grab the top. It's going to be like a trifold brochure. You want to bring this down, but don't cover up the title. Go right up to the title. Make a crease, left to right. You then have a trifold where we can fill in our notes. Let's go ahead and talk about the parts of slope-intercept form. The first piece that we're most familiar with already is M. M represents your slope. You can think of M as what's your move? How do I move my graph? We then have B. B represents your y-intercept. Remember that your y-intercept is located on the y-axis. We often write it in point form. If it's on the y-axis, that would be 0, the number. The x and y represent an x coordinate value and a y coordinate value. We will use those more at a later time. One thing to remember is that when values are written next to each other, like the m and the x, that means we're multiplying. So between these two descriptions, you'll want to remember that you're multiplying those. All right, let's go over the steps on how to graph using the slope-intercept form. The first thing we need to do that we have been doing over and over again is you want to isolate y. Once you isolate y, you will have slope-intercept form. Step 2, we're going to start by plotting the y-intercept. Remember that the y-intercept is a dot, so it's 0, a number. You might also write it as b equals that number. And you can kind of think of b, the hints are, think of b as the beginning. It's where I begin my graph. Next, we want to use the slope to graph more points. So m represents slope, which we often refer to as rise over run. It's easy if we have it in fraction form. Your rise is going to be a number, and your run is going to be a number. A way to remember this, think of m as your move. How do I move from the beginning? As always, you need to draw a line through the points using a straight edge or being as accurate as possible. Don't forget we are going to work on labeling. And at the end of your lines, you always need arrows. Let's go through our examples. Step 1, isolate y. Well, if I take a look, y is by itself, so that's done. Step 2, identify and graph your y-intercept. My b value. My b is my y-intercept. It's my beginning, okay? So if I take a look, what number is by itself? The -3. It could also be written as 0, -3. So I'm going to plot the y-intercept. If it's -3, it is down 3. And we're also going to label that right away. Label it as your beginning point, so I know where you started from. Next, step 3, identify and graph your slope. Your m is always the number in front of your x, which in this case is 2. Well, let's talk about rise and run. How do I break that up? This isn't on your notes sheet, so you might want to add it off to the side of your graph. For rise over run, that means I need a fraction. Think about this. If I have a 2, what number can I put with the 2? That doesn't change it. If you don't have a fraction, you can always put the number over 2, which means my rise is 2 and my run is 1. So how do I graph that? Let's go to your B, your beginning. Place your pencil on your beginning dot. you want to rise 2. You want to run 1. Positive 2 means up. Positive 1 means right. So let's draw our first dot. Sorry about those extra lines. Now we want to repeat this pattern. Rise 2, run 1. Rise 2, run 1. Rise 2, run 1. Now I have this generic rule that I always want you to graph 5 or fill. So if you can make 5 dots, great. If you run out of space, just fill the graph. So I have 5 dots here. Step 4 is to connect the dots. Step 5 is to label your B, which we already did, and draw your arrows. Let's try another one. To start off, we want to isolate Y. In this case, Y is already by itself. Step 2, identify and label your B. Well, which number is by itself? The positive 4. So my B value is 4, or you might write it as 0, 4. Because remember, this is your y-intercept is the meaning of B. Let's plot y-intercept, positive 4. That means from the origin, we're going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4. That's my beginning, so put a B for beginning. Next, we want to graph the slope. The slope is the number in front of x, all of this. So we have a negative 1/2. Let's break that down into rise and run. Which number's on top? 1. Which number's on bottom? 2. Now the negative has to be assigned to one of the numbers. You get to choose. It's probably a good habit to just use the negative right away. So place your pencil on your beginning dot, and we want to plot our slope, our move. So from that dot, rise -1, which means down 1. Run positive 2, which means right 2. Let's try again. Rise -1, run 2. Rise -1, run 2. So as you see these dots, you should see a pattern, you should see consistency, and I want to see 5 dots or fill the graph. Step 4, draw your line. Step 5, label and draw your arrows. Example 3 on your foldable. Step 1, we want to isolate Y. So I've got work to do here. I'm going to draw a line down the equal sign. If I want to isolate Y, I need to kick that 9 over to the other side. That leaves me with an x minus 9. I cannot subtract them because they are not like terms. I'm left with a negative y on the left. I still have work to do. This is technically a -1. So instead of timesing by a negative, I'm going to divide by -1. That isolates the y on the left. What's a 1x divided by -1? -1x. What's -9 divided by -1? +9. You got to watch your signs. Step 2, identify your y-intercept and graph it. Which number is now by itself? The 9. So my b value is 9, or you could write it as 0, 9. Let's plot that. That means on the y-axis, because this is my y-intercept, I'm going to go up to 9. Label that your beginning point right away. All right, let's talk about slope. Your slope, or the number in front of x, is -1. Let's break that apart into a rise and a run. That means that your rise is -1, but what number is it technically over? A 1. So from my beginning dot, place your pencil there. You're going to rise -1, which means down 1, and you're going to run +1, which means right. Keep going. Down 1, right 1. Down 1, right 1. My rule is 5 or fill. You could keep going if you wanted to, but I need at least 5 dots. Step 4, connect. Step 5, label your B and draw arrows. All right, let's take a look at our last example. First step, isolate y. I've got some work to do. To start off, let's kick that 3x to the other side. Instead of positive 3x, let's minus 3x. That leaves me with 12 minus 3x, and I still have a negative 4y left over. Don't forget the negative. Instead of timesing by negative 4, I'm going to divide by negative 4. Y is by itself on the left. 12 divided by negative 4 is negative 3. Negative divided by negative is positive. 3 over 4 doesn't divide, so leave it. 3 over 4, followed by your remaining x. All right, step 2, identify and draw your y-intercept, your b value. Which number is by itself? The negative 3. So my b value is negative 3 or 0, negative 3. It's your beginning value. You begin on the y-axis. So on the y-axis, let's go down 3 because it's negative. That's your b. Let's label. Your slope. Your slope is the number in front of x, or being multiplied by x. So my slope is 3/4. Rise, again, I know this isn't on your notes, so just add that off to the side. Your rise is the top number, the numerator. Your run is the bottom number, or the denominator. So from my beginning dot of negative 3, I want to rise 3, run 4. Both are positive, so that means up 3, right 4. Up 3, right 4. I ran out of space. That means I can also do the opposite. Look, I could go down and to the left. That would mean negative 3 and negative 4. Watch this. Down 3, left 4. Down 3, left 4. This not only fills the graph, but it creates the 5 dots that I want. So 5 or fill. All right, so take a look on Google Classroom what the rest of the expectations are for this unit. I know you'll have some form of practice, so take a look at what you need. Let me know if you have any questions, and just make sure you practice. What's your beginning and what's your move? Until next time, have a good one.